Hey, hey, welcome to The Record Shepherd.
Brr, 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 brr.
Pew, pew, pew.
I'm going to sample that and then have that play at the intro every time we record.
Perfect.
That was good. Yeah, I like that.
Welcome to The Record Shepherd.
You're on 93.7 The Record Shepherd.
Have you ever thought about a career in radio?
No,
Okay.
but it's fun doing it now.
yes.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 18. For those of you following along via the gift of YouTube, you will see that we have a guest on the sofa, on the new sofa.
Wow.
Fancy, funky sofa.
Yeah, we got fancy, kind of 70s vibe, rattan sofa with brown and what are these? You probably can't see it because I'm sitting on it, but we got some pretty funky cushions on here. So
We're trying different things. Every episode you might see a little thing here, a little thing there,
Yeah.
but we are refining our setup and just making it looking as good for the viewers out there.
Absolutely. So the set's a work in progress, but we do have a guest, and I'd like to introduce everybody to multi-instrumentalist, producer, current drummer for popular hard rock metal band Fire from the Gods, and in recent years working in the music industry, moonlighting in the music industry, and also running a recording studio out of Houston, Texas. Welcome to the couch, everybody, Richie Wicander. Wicander, and they messed it up.
Yeah, it's the weird German.
It's the German
Swedish name.
Say it for us.
Say it, Vic. Did I get the V sound right? Wicander.
Wicander.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Wicander.
When I see the W, I'm trying to remind myself to know it's the German. It's the Wicander.
Yeah. Yeah.
Welcome, Richie.
Yeah.
Thanks
And
for having me.
Yeah, and thank you. We've known each other for a few years now, and just thanks for being on our platform and sharing some amazing stories that you got, and hopefully your experience will inspire some of our audience in terms of their musical journeys and all that good stuff. So thanks.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So I think it's been a little while since we you're actually our first artist guest in the new studio, so welcome and thank you. Hope
I'm
you're
honored.
feeling the vibes. What do you think of this new sofa, new setup? You like it?
I love the sofa. I wish you people could see these funky green pillows because they are really funky.
We'll get them out. We'll get them out in a bit.
It's awesome. It's cozy. It's comfy.
Good.
Company.
Good.
Yeah.
We're glad.
Oh, yeah.
So let's start from the start. Obviously, as we said, you're a key member, a drummer of Fire from the Gods, and you've been with the band for 15. The band have been around for 15 years, but what about your journey? When did you come into that?
I joined. Yeah, the band's been around for a while. Had several records out. Already did a few tours and stuff, and a lot of the members had quit, and at the time I was playing guitar in a different band that was managed by the same manager who was also managing Fire from the Gods. So this was about early 2014, I'd say. And
this is in Texas.
Yeah, this
Okay.
was in Austin, Texas. So I just finished studying down there, going for audio engineering and music business and all of that, and I was kind of itching to play again because I'd played my whole childhood and teenage years, and so I met those guys and we just hit it off right from the get-go. I remember really liking their music, and the band I was in kind of fell apart, and Fire from the Gods had some members leave, so it was just this really smooth sort of transition in, and they had a position open for drums, and I was like, you know what? I just want to play regardless of what instrument it is. I've always been a writer, a songwriter, and so, it didn't really matter what instrument I did. It just mattered that I could still write music, and kind of from the get-go we we got together. It was Bonner, the bass player, and Drew, those are the two original members. Drew is like the OG. He started it in high school, and so this band's been around in Austin for a long time, and so we just kind of hit it off from there, and all of a sudden later that year we played so many shows, and then we were in California and played Knotfest, which was, I think it was the first, maybe the second Knotfest that existed in San Bernardino. So that's Slipknot's festival.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to play a set, and went really well. And from there we started touring, and honestly the tours were really shot. It was like what you could imagine, living in the dirty van, driving around the US, going to shows where there's like maybe 30 people, some days 7, some days 100. You just never really knew, and we just kept it going because we just wanted to play. So
was that your first time in that sort of environment, or did you grow up playing in bands and playing shows like that?
Yeah, I always played in bands. My first band, I think I was 10. We were called Anavrin, which was Nirvana backwards. So obsessed with Kurt and Nirvana. I just thought that band was so sick, and we were also a 3-piece, so it just made sense. At the time, my first instrument was guitar and vocals, so I always did that in every band I was in, except for Fire from the Gods.
So you're coming into the band. You're a guitarist and a vocalist and a songwriter, but you see this amazing opportunity, and you're just like, I'm going to join the band no matter what instrument that I have to play. Was there a big learning curve there in terms of learning the repertoire, learning the instrument itself?
Yeah, I do remember I listened to, they had an EP called Politically Incorrect, and it was like a whole different lineup. But I remember just listening to it over and over and over and over again, and I didn't actually have a drum set to rehearse on before my first audition with the guys.
Really?
So I was just
on the
tapping cushion. And tapping my legs. I remember I had a long flight. I went to visit family in Germany, and both of those flights were very valuable time because you got 10 hours to crush. So what did I do? Just had the music on repeat, and it was just air tapping, probably driving everyone mad on the flight.
yeah. So 10 hours.
Yeah.
But that's an important, I think, takeaway even in the beginning here is you had already refined one of your primary instruments, which is your ear. So your ability to sort of listen to music and pick it up and learning what you need to rehearse is something you had already had in you that helped you when you were joining this band.
Yeah, I think so too. Just knowing the material, front to back in that way is just as important as playing the material over and over again, because if you know the song, the arrangement, the structure, when the cues are and so forth, I feel like it helps going into actually rehearsing. It's just like when you write a song, you're so close to it that it's really hard to mess it up when you're playing live because you're attached to it. So if you're somebody, I've always hats off to all the people out there that, are just players, they're not writers, because those guys actually, they learn so many songs and they're not attached to the songs in that way, and that's something I've always been. So it's almost weird for me on the other side. I spent some time playing in a gospel church where I did have to learn a lot of the songs just, based off of listening to the music, and there was no sheet music or anything. It was just hearing it with your ear. So training your ear is so important. I think as a musician, it's just as important, maybe even more important than having all of the technical knowledge,
Wow.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Which of course you do have, right? And you alluded to it there that you were studying to become a sound engineer in Houston, and so obviously you've been playing in bands since the age of 10. you know decided that like at an early point you must have like essentially taken the decision that you wanted to do music professionally in whatever capacity, in some sort of capacity. So but I'm sure that education on the technical side must have lent itself well to life in a band, and you know, like all of that process. So you joined Fire from the Gods. They already had an EP but had not recorded their first album yet.
They did have a record out. It was called Sweet Lasting Revenge, which I think they recorded with Tim Lambesis from As I Lay Dying before he had his whole thing going on. And yeah, I really didn't like hear of the band before I started playing in Austin. So I just like kind of got out there, started, you know, playing with this guy that I'd made a lot of music with beforehand. And funny enough, we had some conversations with, you know, a certain label that then eventually years down the road Fire from the Gods signed to, which was Rise Records. So
shout out to Rise Records.
Yes.
Yeah, shout out. So
shout out to Sean.
Yeah, shout out to Sean, the team. Yeah, we you know, that was kind of like our start, that was the platform, you know, to really get a record going. So we had a few singles, and those singles, I think it was really, we got signed off of 2 singles. So we went to Houston to record at the studio that I now work out of in Houston. So we met Robbie Joyner. Shout out to Robbie, my man. Yeah, we hit it off right from the bat. He and I just had this like musical connection, a nerd connection on the you know, recording side of it, and like you were both Pro Tools guys, and we were minimalistic with gear. It's like, you know, we didn't really have much, and we're kind of in that similar position where it's like, make the most out of the gear you do have and learn how to, you know, if it's all you have is this SM58, you can learn how to make it sound amazing and make something happen, you know. I think a lot of people do use like gear as a crutch, like, oh, I don't have this $1 million facility to record songs in, but it all starts with the song, you know.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, that's what I like. I wanted to get into that. Like when you know, joined the band with that sound engineer background that you got, like that. How have you find that lends itself like well?
Absolutely.
That must be such a
and
head start.
That's exactly why I did that. You know, I think I was maybe like 14. I had my first recording studio experience that really changed my life, because I knew, man, if I can I've figured out instruments, I figured out how to come up with ideas and just, you know, that part of it. But I really always, you know, I've the first few demos with my early bands, it was all like literally a tape deck with 2 mic inputs left and right. And I just put 1 mic to the drums and 1 mic over to the PA, in hopes that was a good balance, and, you know, going back and forth from that. And of course it sounded terrible, but you know, we had a cassette. You were able to take it and put it in and then listen to what you're doing, and that really revealed like, wow, okay, now I know this really sucks and this is actually kind of cool. So maybe we focus more on this cool stuff we found rather than like trying to be this other thing. And so, yeah, the recording of it all, like, really, it just changed my whole mindset. And I knew it was like, okay, being a musician these days is not what it used to be. I'm not going to be a millionaire overnight. Those things can happen, and those stories do exist as well, but I just had this feeling like, okay, I need to learn how to record, because then if I can play and record, then everything's going to get easier. And it definitely did. I did not know at that time how expensive recording gear was going to be, but there are always ways, like I said, you know.
It's a value of trial and error. It seems like you were going through, whether it be learning how to record, being in bands that failed, going on tour where there's 30 people in the crowd, and, you know, just sort of figuring it out along your career.
Yeah.
I do want to touch base on, because in a previous podcast we had talked about the importance of location in terms of your musical journey and like development. So you at the time were studying in Austin, Texas. Do you think that environment sort of helped you make the connections that you made? Was that important, or do you feel like you could have been in any, you know, city and you would have been able to do that yourself?
I think for me personally, the location has always been a weird one because you don't really think of Texas as like this music hotspot, or at least I didn't. I knew Austin was this like so-called music capital of the world. At least they call it that. To me, it was like the cover band capital of the world. You know, you can walk down 6th Street and there's some sort of country cover band or a Willie Nelson guy over here and this other, you know, band over there covering music. But I had such a hard time like finding the scene. I did feel like, because I lived in San Antonio for a year when I first moved from Germany to the States, and when I was nearly 18, and they had this like awesome metal scene. And there was a venue called the White Rabbit, and you know, I think the location thing is, it's really on you what you make that location to be, because you know, it's like, do you want to be another guy in LA, New York, Nashville doing what, you know, 40,000 other people are doing in that same space? Or do you want to be the first one that in your city, or the you know, that can create something new or do something extraordinary for that scene? And I guess in that moment I really wasn't too concerned with location. Also, like growing up in Germany, in a not buzzy city, I wasn't in Berlin, I wasn't even close, so the music scene was like, well, there were like 2 or 3 venues I could go to see concerts, and that's about it, you know. So we really had to create our music scene in the town that I grew up in. Like, there were maybe a handful of musicians, and we just all kind of like floated around, and we'd get all these youth centers to throw shows and then like invite our friends, and all of a sudden people like our friends and people we knew, peers and stuff, liked going to shows, and we're all in like punk bands and just trying to be rowdy and have mosh pits and like leave these youth centers destroyed sometimes. But that was it. That was like, you know, I was never big into drinking or the party of like, I never wanted to be a musician to get girls, or like the sex, drugs, rock and roll thing, like never appealed to me. It was just like, I just want to see people react to my music. Like, wow. That's really what drove me to doing it so much. Yeah. And I knew that it was like kind of the more looked down upon degenerate thing to do, because especially in Germany, I don't think like most people are like, you know, you're from Europe. It's not like if you're like deciding I'm going to be a musician, most people are like, oh God, here we go.
Yeah, there is. I wonder, I'd love to, that would be an interesting study to think about. You know, I feel like here in the States, it's a very entrepreneurial culture, and like, it's kind of like, I don't know, that sort of like, there's an adventurous entrepreneurial spirit which I feel is very much encouraged in the States, and in Europe I think like that is recognized, that exists over here. I'd love to know if like the similar sort of thing exists for just exactly that, like, yeah, like I'm going to follow my dreams, I'm going to do something that's not the sort of, you know, it's not an office 9 to 5. Yeah, it's not a beaten path. It's like, I'm going to go and try to follow my dreams. I wonder, is that like more acceptable over here compared to Europe? I haven't actually thought about that.
Yeah, I wonder too. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess fast forwarding back to like the band days and Texas and stuff, I think it's not the location. I think it's the people you interact with, you meet. It's your network.
Yeah. Well, and to Tim's point, that was one of the things we were wondering is like, you know, is it important to put yourself in a position where a location where you are going to meet that network, or you've more chance of connecting with that network? And I think the answer to that, I feel, is like, yeah, probably. Like if you're living in like the arse end of nowhere, then you know you probably got to get up and go somewhere.
It's hard, yeah.
But also too, it's I think similar to how you were talking about people using equipment as a crutch. People can definitely use location as a crutch, right?
Yep.
Whether I just have to be in New York, I have to make it to LA in order to make my situation better.
Mm-hmm.
But then, you know, there are often times where people do live in those cities and they still don't necessarily make the connections that they want to make, because I think you do have to take a bit of onus on building your own network like you're talking about.
Definitely.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think, it's also like, I guess thinking back, like, it's like random things can happen. You know, I remember meet the one guy that really changed a lot for me and the way of even getting back into a music scene as a whole was like, I went and got a tattoo, and the tattoo guy and Alex and I were talking, and he was like, oh, you do music? Well, my roommate is A Day to Remember's tour manager. You guys should meet.
Wow.
And at the time, A Day to Remember wasn't really a big band yet. You know, they were on Warped Tour and doing that kind of stuff, but they hadn't like fully blown up yet. This was before the Homesick album, I believe. And so, you know, I was like, yeah, of course I want to meet him. Let's go. And we went to his flat, smoked a bunch of weed and hung out. And then the next time we hung out, we made like 5 or 6 songs.
That's amazing. Yeah.
That's definitely where the production thing came in really handy. Was like, I knew how to record and he didn't. And so he was also looking for somebody that knew how to record his ideas. And so then we just made a bunch of music. We you know, toyed around with it, just caught a vibe, and eventually it kind of died out. I was still in school, really focused on that. Yeah, because I love the studio. I love recording and producing. I think it's like probably my favorite place to be, all in all. I love playing live, but there's something about living in the studio.
That creative process,
so
I guess.
Yeah, and that's actually a good segue. So fast forwarding from when you first joined the band to the first project that you were able to write and record with the band members. Walk me through that process. What was that project called?
The first band that I was in? Or?
No, with Fire from the Gods. Like the first project you were able to actually record and like write songs with that band rather than just learning old songs. Yeah,
so we were in our storage unit practice space, which we still have, by the way.
Nice.
We kept those humble beginnings around. And so that in that storage unit, I remember I just had my laptop. We were rehearsing, and Jameson and I were like, "Hey, let's just write something," you know, because I think we're just waiting on the rest of the guys to get there, and we came up with this idea, which then turned into a song called Composition, and that was like one of the first newer songs that we had as a band. And then we went to Robbie in Houston, Black Book Sound, which is the studio I work out of now again. So, and he had written a song that turned into our song Pretenders, and those 2 singles were the first 2 songs we had done. So we had 2 songs new, and those. I think it was Greg, the founder of Rise Records. He heard them through our manager, and he just really liked what he heard and said, yeah, let's make it happen. And, you know, we played a lot of showcases too for Sumerian Records and a bunch of different labels and stuff, but that was the label that really like I think saw our vision, our creative vision, and that I think that song composition really started it off for us because, you know, we like to blend hip hop and metal, and that was just like, it felt so good. We were like, wow, this is just naturally what we should be doing because it just feels right. Like, our singer was in New York, he was super into it, and we actually had another singer at the time, and so like those two songs we had, they didn't even come out yet, and we started touring. We started playing them live.
Nice.
Before they were even released, and
that's cool. So you knew you were onto a good thing.
Yeah, because we were seeing the
right.
reaction of the crowds, and we're like, yeah, man, that breakdown really did slap. And then like the funky kind of hip hop bridge comes, and like it just gets vibey for a moment. In metal, you don't really get to like vibe too much because it's always like high octane and a lot of energy. So that was like cool to just see that combo worked for us. And then we were sent to the studio.
To your happy place.
Yes, which turned into, it was a happy place, but it was, I mean, we really like, we got torn apart.
Toiled in there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had 10 days to write a full record musically. So we spent 10 days in Houston preparing. The original plan was, okay, we're going to record the record in Houston with Robbie. I had just moved to Houston to be there like for that process, and just in general I wanted, like, I was working at Guitar Center for a long time, you know, did every department and pro audio and all that stuff, and I was just so over it. I was like, I need to focus on, you know, my craft. Like, I need to give it my all. And I was broke as shit, and we were just living in the studio. And then all of a sudden we get a call. They said, hey, well, this band of Mice and Men was supposed to be in with David Bendeth in New Jersey at the House of Loud. And, you know, David Bendeth produced Breaking Benjamin, Paramore's Riot. He's, you know, remix and like did Elvis Presley's remix, like an OG guy. And we're like, man, are we ready? You know, like we don't even have a record, and they're sending us off to him because unfortunately Austin Carlisle got really sick, so they couldn't finish their record. And because that was a Rise Records band, they were like, well, if Mice and Men can't go, then let's get Fire from the Gods in there. And it was like, over the holidays, I was planning to go see my family like everyone else. So we were in New York over the holidays and making a record with 10 days to write a record. And then we got here and we got scolded because David Bendeth, shout out, I love you, man.
Whip y'all in the shade.
Yeah, he did. I mean, and you know, in the end, everything worked out. And, you know, it was like just a real vigorous process for us, but we got the record narrative done, and it's a very aggressive record. There's a lot of pain in that record. Our singer at the time, he was a stockbroker on Wall Street. And
wow.
Yeah, and he got fired from his job, I believe. AJ, that's correct.
You gotta get him on here. That's an interesting
that'd
story.
be brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah. So
you could pick us some stocks as well while he's at it. Yeah.
Right. So the first day at Bendeth's, he walked in with his suit, his like full, like he just got off of Wall Street and then went to Jersey to come meet us, and we'd already been there all day, just getting reamed by Bendeth about how we didn't have songs and what do we do with these instrumentals? Like, he doesn't even know what to do with our material. And
wow.
We're like, well, we only had 10 days. What do you expect?
Wow.
You know, and then
this is like an OG producer who's...
Yeah, he's used to like a band coming in with 30 tracks and then
like
these are all,
and,
like, these aren't good enough. Let's like focus on... And they had 3 months and we had like 3 weeks.
3 weeks. So 10 days to write the material,
Yeah.
and then 3 weeks to get it all straight and
Yeah.
done.
And then so over Christmas, we went to our publisher, and we had the small little closet room to write and record, and we recorded a lot of the vocals. Like, I'd say like 60% of the vocals on that record were recorded on $100 microphone.
Wow.
Mixed by a multi-platinum award-winning producer, you know? And
Mhm.
it's like, it just shows, again, it's like, it's really all about the material and then how you work it, rather than like,
Yeah, so you don't need all the gear.
yeah.
And
all
in
the
ter-
gear and no idea.
And in terms of the yeah. And in terms of the the discipline, maybe we can touch briefly on, you know, because I've been fortunate enough to record in studios myself as a drummer, and
Mhm.
maybe we could talk about, like, as an instrumentalist, the things you're allowed to get away with performing live that you can't get away with in the studio, and how precise your playing has to be, and how painstaking that is if you've never been through that process before.
It was intense.
Yeah.
I will say that. And, you know, I was definitely the one that was picked on because that was kind of the thing. And in the moment, it was just like, you know, when you're just writing the music, we had zero time to actually rehearse anything or even process what this is going to feel like or sound like on the record. So, yeah, it was very vigorous. We had to find a lot of ways around that, and to, you know, sometimes you just have to make it happen. And that's really, honestly, where I really learned you can't have an ego in the studio. It just kills everything. It kills the process. It kills the vibes, and it kills what's best for the song. It just does. And that was like so valuable for me, and I'm so glad we got to experience that. And, you know, and in the end, you know, like Robbie, our collaborator, who was like our sixth member of the band, we call him, you know, and he cut all the vocals, or most of them, and in the end, you know, David Bendeth actually gave him the producer credit because he had made all the vocals happen, and like all the pre-production we did in Houston, like a lot of the guitar takes, a lot of the stuff we did in those 10 days of pre-production in Houston ended up on the record as well.
Wow.
So it's just, you know, lightning in a bottle sometimes, and you just gotta be ready, because you never know. Like, sometimes you could go in for a demo session or a writing session, but you might never get that moment back. The emotion that you're in that moment of, like, maybe right then you're hurting, you're in pain. And later down the road, when you go in to cut the record, you might have just, you know, scored the hottest guy or girl in your life, and then you're on top of the world, and you can't get that pain back out of you in the moment. So it's like, sometimes just doing your best with what you have is so important. And yeah, so
that's awesome. I think that's also true. Like, that's why you get a whole bunch of artists or publishers that want to do re-records for when they're doing synchronization licenses, and they, you know, the publisher will have the song already for the synchronization license. But if assuming that the re-record restriction under a record label, which typically exists in a record deal, assuming that period has expired, then the publisher's like, can we just like re-record this, and then like we can have the whole, you know, both sides. We can get the publishing money and we can get the record side as well. But some re-records are better than others, basically. And I think you're absolutely right. You're never going to be able to totally recreate the magic, you know, of a re-record. So of the original, potentially. So that's interesting. That's what it's about, isn't it? You can just be in that space, and you got to capture that magic there and then, and you may not capture it again.
Yeah.
That's part of the beauty for me about It's the same with musical performances, live performances as well. Like everyone knows,
Yeah.
you can go to see your favorite band, and some gigs for whatever reason are just better than others, and it's like we're humans at the end of the day, and that, like, people feel good some days they don't feel so good, some days they feel fucking class, and
Yeah,
like, you know,
exactly.
and the crowd the same, you know. So I think it's like that's one of the beauties about music. It's just like it's never going to be the same
Mhm.
sort of thing.
So yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that's a good point. And just on that about showing up, maybe in days that aren't your best days, or showing up when you know you're having a really good day, how does that transfer on tour for you guys? Are there days where you know you might have more of an ego, or you might not be feeling the best, and how do you sort of overcome that? Like
Absolutely.
years and years as a band together.
Yeah, I mean there are days where, like, just this last tour I was sick for about a week of it, and you know, all day you're just dreading I gotta schlep my drums in, set up a million pieces. But really that is all, you'll get through it. But then when the show happens, I have this thing in me that is like, I'm going to perform the same no matter what just happened today to me. I don't want people to know that about me, because when I'm on stage, they want to be, they're going to see if I'm not having a good time. People can see that, you know, and like,
yeah, that's amazing. That's like, that's a very professional attitude to take, because ultimately, you know, I was watching the Kings of Leon documentary one time, and they were in the studio having a bad time of it, and like things weren't going right, and they were just trying to rally. And I remember just there was a line, it's like you know, we're some people's favorite band, you know, we're some, and like they're waiting for this record, so like let's get at it and like deliver for these people.
yeah, you
who's
don't
like,
know who, like, Jimmy just spent his last $20 to come see your band,
Yeah.
because your music is getting him through the day. And I've had bands like that for myself that get me through the day or the week, or, you know, like, we've had people come up to us saying like, you know, I was going to take my life, but then I heard the song, and
Wow.
and it's,
Wow.
you know, sometimes it's really overwhelming, because you're like, wait, this can't be real, you know, but
yeah.
it is, it's a reality for some people that just connect to your music for whatever reason. And it's for those people that I just can't, like, not give my all, I guess. And I think that it's like, if you want to do the music thing and be a performer, I do expect that from most performers, you know, because that's that saying, like, the show must go on. You know, it's so real.
and it's also, I think, like, you know, as I'm sure it's hard. I mean, like, we talk about it all the time. It's, look, there's an element that people don't see, where, you know, all the things you're talking about, like you got to go through those periods where you're flat broke, you know, things are difficult, you're toiling in the studio. It's not all glamorous. It's not all glamorous. Yeah.
Mostly not.
Yeah, mostly not glamorous. Yet there is another side where, you know, you got to remember also that, like, you're, like, artists are in this position where they are living this sort of, like, dream, like they're living the dream that they went for, you know what I mean, that, like, a lot of people don't ever get to that, where they're like they're actually realizing their dream. So, you know, it's a difficult one. I can understand, because we're all humans and people are on the road and they're knackered, etc. But I think the way you approach it is incredibly noble, that you have this, like, commitment to yourself to give it your best, because ultimately, you know, I guess you're realizing your dream up there, you know.
Yeah. It's, you know, I think it's, like, very similar in starting a business. It's like going into doing the studio thing and just quitting my job was also very stressful, being like, I have zero clientele. People don't know me as a producer or engineer. So it's really like, you have to, like, I was just cold DMing and calling and emailing bands left and right, or bands that I knew of that were playing around and maybe wanted to come for a free session, you know. And I remember this one band came from Austin, and I just gave them a free session because I don't have a portfolio, so I gotta make it happen somehow.
Yeah.
So I started doing that and started like telling Robbie, yo, you know, like, I'll record the guitars on this, or it's just got to put yourself out there. I think in those situations, you just have to like eat it sometimes. And I was fortunate enough to hear those words from another producer in Sweden, Henry Bergström, that gave me an opportunity while I was in school to work with these two singers from the UK. And it was kind of like house party music, and you know, there's no pay, it's just do it. And he had worked on some really amazing pop records in his past, and some of those he did for nothing, because he knew if I just do it and then they put it out, then people will look at my name and say, oh, this guy did it, we should go work with him. And it totally works. It definitely worked, you know, like. Yeah, and I'm still growing. I'm still. Yeah. It's like this resume thing, you know. You just got to keep building it and do what you can. And certain situations will help pay your bills and stuff. And because you're confident, you know, you can help this band or artist, and others, you're like, you know, this is an opportunity. So it's kind of like you have to see which route is going to be more helpful. Like, you know, sometimes just do it.
You're always in that sort of survivor mentality.
Yeah,
you're constantly.
I feel like it never changes. Like even being on like really big tours and then also really small tours, it's the same. I think just having the same mentality of like, I'm gonna do the same thing regardless if it's 7 people or 7,000 people. I think it helps a lot.
I love that. That to me is like the top tip, the top takeaway for artists that are out there performing live. It's like just treat it exactly the same, whether it's 7 people, 7,000 people.
Well, yeah. So if you lose your mind in front of 7 people, they might tell another 10 people, and those people will tell other people, and then the next time you play in that city, you might have 200 people come up because of the word of mouth, you know. And
or you get like a different reaction where, as an audience member, there's nothing worse than feeling like you're being taken for granted, and it's just essentially just another tour stop. It feels a bit too rehearsed, where it's not as personable. But on the flip side, there's nothing better than, like, let's say you do see a band or an act and they're really, really tired, but they're able to sort of roll with the punches and, like, make it a part of their banter. Like, it's fun when you see a band mess up and they just sort of acknowledge it, and it's kind of funny, you know, versus them taking it super duper, you know, hard and just like, you know, why the hell did you not play that note there? But, you know, that's always fun to see a band sort of work through those issues.
I agree. Yeah, it's fun.
What's your favorite thing about life on the road? And I guess the next question is, what's the worst thing about life on the road?
I mean, I love the traveling aspect a lot. Being able to see so many places and the cultures behind it. I think that's, you know, I've always really loved traveling, as you know, as a kid, and growing up in Europe, you can go so many different be in so many different cultures so quickly. Yeah, and just the in terms of like travel distance from one country to the next, et cetera, exactly.
Et cetera. Yeah, the culture changes a lot more.
But I've also noticed that in the States, you know, going from state to state, and there are the different mentalities and different like subcultures going on. And
you're talking about New York versus New Jersey?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep. Or, you know, Texas versus Wisconsin. You know, it's like both of it's kind of country living, but it's complete like different mentalities yet similar. Yeah, America is such an interesting, or the U.S. is such an interesting place, and I I mean, obviously the shows, it's like the either 30, 45 or minutes or an hour that you get, everything in your life vanishes for that time, because you literally can't think about anything else. And if you do, those are the times when you mess up.
Right.
That's like when you catch yourself mid verse 2 and you're like, oh wow, that burger was so good. Oh shit, where am I in the song now? You know, like it doesn't happen too often, but
have you ever had that feeling where you're playing a live show and then you just blank? Like you forget everything?
Yeah, totally.
Like,
it's happened, yeah. I feel like at this point I'm kind of on autopilot, and like as the drummer and being on a metronome, I really literally can't mess up, because if I mess up, everyone's off, and it's just not gonna work out well. So you just got to steer the ship back there and just stay on it. But
do you use any techniques for that? Like in terms of like focus, you know, everyone sort of these days is doing all sorts of like, you know, meditation and mindfulness, or is it just literally it's just failure is not an option?
It's just not.
Do whatever you need to.
You drop a stick, just stay on the click and do whatever else you can to make it not as awkward, you know. But I think it's just repetition and practice. And
if you drop a stick, stay on the click.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. We've got another takeaway.
Takeaway. Just stay on the click.
You know, I've decided what I want to do is get like, you know, kind of like a candy jar, like a sweetie jar, and put these little tips in, and then at the end of the year we'll like sort of lucky dip them and like read them out. That's what I want to do.
That's
so
great.
We'll get you to put one of those in tonight.
Man, this has been a great conversation, and I want to take the opportunity to touch on all aspects of your experience. So, you know, in addition to you being a writer, a producer, a drummer for the successful band, we'd be remiss not to mention that you have also been working full-time in music publishing as well. And that's something that you've done for the past few years.
Yep. It's been about nearly 5 years, I'd say now. Wow. 4.5 years-ish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting experience. Like you're almost like getting like kind of, you know, you're going from the technical side of actually making the music itself to more like a technical side of the business of music, etc. So, what's the learning curve been like there? You know, in terms of like finding out how that sort of side of things works, and then I guess actually applying it, I should imagine, to your own music.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the beginning definitely in a way was sort of overwhelming, but also very interesting. And having done some time, like spent some time in college studying music business and the music industry, and like, you know, you get all of the like pinpoints, like here's, you need your PRO, ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, whatever, wherever you are, there's different ones. And then, you know, the other thing they touched on was like, okay, like we had a business class where it was like create a business. So for my class, my final project was I created a recording studio, and actually like that then ended up happening in real life. And you know, but you just, it's all in theory. It sounds so like, oh cool, yeah, it totally makes sense. But once you're in it, that's when you're really learning, I think.
Like anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's been the great thing, like especially with you know who I work with, is the most important of all of it, because you know, I guess it's like a certain, like I work in rock and metal publishing.
Yeah.
So it's really like right up my alley.
Yeah.
And I know all of these bands we work with, and even some of them I've toured with. So, you know, they're like personal relationships, but also like the mutual, like you're an artist, I'm an artist, respect. And like, I think that the industry sometimes does get like, it can get a bad rep, it can get a good rep, but there's always the like, the suits or whatever. But, it's like, I think like the learning curve was pretty big for me because I'd never worked at any industry gig before.
Yeah, of course. And it's I would say that like you probably got a good look firsthand at how overwhelmingly confusing and complex the publishing side of the industry
is.
It's
insane.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that even a lot of managers and other, record labels and stuff like that, it's hard for them to understand it as well because it's such a per deal based industry. It's never the same, it seems. Like there are certain guidelines and rules you can follow, but like not one artist or band has the same setup because it's a human experience and it's art at the end of the day. So there really aren't these like crazy formulas that people speculate there are, like here's your songwriting, like if you use these melodies you're gonna have a hit. It's just not, that doesn't exist. It's like does not exist.
Yeah, that's it. Like, if it well, thank God it doesn't, right? It'd be all pretty boring if it was. And
at that point AI could
maybe I'm just sitting thinking
that's a whole other podcast. Yeah,
I'm just sitting thinking maybe that's the protection, like because like actually if you don't know how to program it, if you don't actually know what to create, if humans can't work it out, then we'll see if machines can. Hopefully not. But yeah, so like, and has that experience and working on the sort of like publishing side of things, like has that taught you lessons for making sure you're collecting your own royalties and things like that, and making sure the checks are coming in?
Yeah, I can only stress, if you're an artist and you're starting out, definitely look into what music publishing is and how it will be your friend if you're educated in it. And there are so many ways online to educate. Same with recording or learning an instrument. There are ways to find all of the information these days. And I remember when I first got the job offer to come work in publishing, and it was like a temp position, and I like redove into it because I knew it was like, I want to be prepared going in at some level, so I knew, okay, like I had refreshed because I was in like a mindset of complete like Pro Tools, plugins, gear,
right,
electronics.
You're in this one universe.
Very, and like writing and being a creative and being a guy on tour. But then, it did, I always knew that I at some point had to tap into the music industry somehow, and I made it a point on every tour to meet everyone we worked with on our team. Like I knew that like these sort of connections are so vital and so important to make, and just like going to have lunch with your publisher. Yeah, it's like I think it did make a difference because then my publisher was able to learn more about me and what my intentions are, and speaking about, and I went to school for all this stuff, and now I'm out here touring. And I think, those kind of, I've always wanted to know more about the business, because if you're going to work in the business, I think it does help a lot knowing how you can work with the business and in the business, because the business is full of amazing people like you yourselves, and
thank you.
Yeah, and like for real though,
we'll
like
take it.
There's so many amazing people that work in the music industry that maybe aren't like singer-songwriters or producers, but they have a passion to work in music and they dedicate their life to working in music. And if it's admin or being more creative or legal or finance, it's like none of this is gonna work without those people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big ecosystem, and there are these different universes that exist, but ultimately the whole thing comes together, right? But it's very difficult to specialize in all of the, let's call them disciplines or what have you, and that's why it is a team. And like, people always stand up when they're winning awards and they want to thank their team, etc., but like that to me is just like an acknowledgement that like really one person or even one band or whatever, they really can't do it by themselves, not to go right to the top or to get to the level you need to actually sustain it over a long period of time. There's a lot of people involved and a lot of like different cogs, and so, but I mean, quite honestly, like hearing your story, like you're halfway there to being across all of them yourself.
Right. And sometimes it makes my brain explode.
But
exactly.
you know, I do think more musicians should join the music industry. You know, listening to your story, and even when you said working in publishing, you had personal relationships with some of these people that you were able to work with in the future. And I think there are different universes, and unfortunately, not to be going on an anti-music business rant because I work in it. So, but you know, I think the more that people progress, the more that we tend to lose that fandom and that purpose of why we're actually doing this, and that's to support artists, songwriters, you know, musicians, and you can bring that level of empathy to the bands that you work with because you've been there before. Not saying that that's a requirement, but I think it certainly helps you do what you do.
Definitely. And honestly, every band I work with, I think sharing your knowledge and sharing your experience is so important. And every amazing, legendary musician or producer I've been able to work with, and so thankful for all of that, has been so helpful and so understanding, and always, I think the real ones just want to teach, and they will, and the others that are more fearful kind of, you know, hold these like so-called secrets in the bag, and it just, there really is there aren't any secrets. It's even down to like, you know, mixing. Like, yeah, you could probably like get, let's say, any of your favorite mixing engineer's template, but you don't have their brain, and so you will never be able to, you know, translate that same mix into what you're doing. And then so that's really, it's like, I think the knowledge, just sharing it, is so important. And I do work with a lot of bands that I tell them, like, hey, do you have, like, if it's a local band, the first thing I'm like, you know, once we're done with everything, like, do you guys have your ASCAP set up or BMI? You know, what are you, we need to register these songs. We need to take care of everything. So and
it's money at the end of the day. It's money in your pocket. Like, if you were going into, you know, your part-time job, whatever it might be, and, you know, you were doing the work, but you weren't really sure if they were putting the check into your bank at the end of the month. Totally. You'd be going like, what the fuck, you know? So it's like, it's exactly the same thing. You're out there, you're doing the work, make sure you're getting paid for it.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. And like, you know, for me, I didn't have my PRO set up before Fire from the Gods. I wish I could go back and fix that, but I can't. And that's thanks to my publisher, because she said, hey, you guys need to sign up for your PRO. And then I was like, oh yeah, the PRO stuff, that's right. You know, it like comes back, because in school, again, you're just like, you learn it and then you get your grade and you're like, woo, next class, let's go. You know, and of course you retain that, but you like, there's so much going on in music that, and nowadays you do kind of have to wear a lot of hats, if you're not getting handouts. You know, some people do get luckier than others with the people they meet and all that, but if you're not that lucky person, then you gotta just go at it and work for it. But
thankfully there are more and more resources out there that to educate people, including podcasts like the Record Shepherd podcast.
Absolutely,
So
yeah.
if you don't know about a PRO is, go back and check out some of our earlier episodes. And
If you don't know what a PRO is by now,
you haven't been listening.
we gotta fix that.
Yep.
Performing Rights Organization. There you go.
Richie, did you have anything?
Well, I wanted to, like, we were just casually talking earlier, and there was there was a story that you were about to tell us that I was like, whoa, hang on, stop right there.
All right.
Because I wanna save this for the pod itself.
Fun tour story.
So yeah, fun tour stories or interesting tour stories. Let's take it away.
Okay. I'll go back to this recent one. So we're talking about Jeffrey Dahmer and, great topics.
We're talking about Netflix.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, my God.
So we're talking about that, and then I remembered, we just played The Rave, this venue in Milwaukee, which is right across from the hotel where Dahmer murdered a lot of people. And so this venue is, everyone's like, oh, well, it's haunted, and, we're all like, whatever.
The venue's haunted, or
the venue,
Wow.
the venue as well. So there is the swimming pool down in the bottom of the venue, and the first time we played The Rave was with Korn. It was Fire from the Gods and Korn, and that was Korn's dressing room, so we weren't able to go down there and check it out. But then this last time we were able to finally go down, and most bands, like, I've always seen it on other bands, like Instagram stories, like they're down there, and there's this, like, Mac Miller actually wrote on the pool, like, I think it's like Mac Miller in whatever year, I'm dead now. And he's passed away since. So there's all these, like, little freaky little things there. So that day, we were on tour with Norma Jean, and the singer Corey comes up to me, and he's like, man, I gotta show you this picture, and we're in this, like, weird little green room area. It's just such a suspect venue, and, like, it's great. The rooms, they have, like, several different venues, and, like, there's a smaller one, a medium size, and then the mega room. And this time we were playing the, like, smaller room, and so we were in the green room, and he's like, yo, check out this picture. And it's a picture of a, like, little gremlin looking face right next to where we're standing. And I was like, oh, that's so freaky, like, that's right there, right? And he's like, yeah, the cleaning lady just took that picture, like, hours ago, and is, like, completely freaked out. And
No
I'm
way.
just like, oh my God. And they're like, all these weird I don't know, the whole
So the
day
face was just like where?
It was in the picture. Like, it's like a phone
Just
picture.
floating?
And it's just floating above this area, and I'm, like, standing, and it's, like, right here. And I was just like, and earlier I was in the restroom, and I kept seeing something, like, in the corner of my eye, and I constantly was like, Bonner, Drew, like, some band, maybe one of my bandmates or something, and there's nobody. And, like, I don't know, the whole day I just had these, like, really weird vibes, and then, like, he showed me that picture, and it just freaked me out.
Oh, wow.
Gotta say,
So-
we're currently the only people in this building right now, and I'm getting chills. We're gonna look back at the footage, and there's, like, a little face right here.
Oh my God! Yeah, can you imagine? We, like, play this back, and there's a wee gremlin face, like, over Richie.
On that note, man.
Yeah. So that was kind of like, okay. And then that story reminded me just now of the Thompson House. And this is a venue that I think Abraham Lincoln, something like that.
Played a metal show?
No, somebody like stayed in this house, and it's a venue, but also haunted. And we played there early on in our touring days. And I remember we got to the venue, and the sound guy, like the local sound guy, said, just letting you know, this venue is haunted. And of course, all of us again are like, whatever. And then he's like, electronics fail a lot in here. And I was like, come on. So we get set up, sound check, everything's smooth. I get on stage to start our first song, and we were running like backing tracks off of a laptop. And I sit on my drums, I look over to the left, and I watch my laptop screen just go gray. And I'm like, okay, this is really weird. And so my laptop literally died.
It just died?
Died. The hard drive fried. Like, I lost stuff. We had no more laptop. Like,
Oh my
it just
God.
died. And
Did
yeah,
you
so
did you believe in like paranormal activity
No.
before that? No, so
No.
just like, but now you do between
yeah.
little gremlins' faces
all these little
and fried hard drives.
There's been other things on tour too, and like, yeah, we were talking earlier. Like, you know, you drive a lot, right? So you're gonna see some stuff on the road.
Yeah.
But you know, like one day we see a flip truck that's burning, and then next thing you know, you see an accident happen, and it's like there's just certain days on tour where you just like kind of feel like everything is sequentially off.
Yeah,
just
yeah,
keeps
yeah.
happening in
That's
these-
a glitch in the matrix.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah,
So-
definitely. Well, look, speaking of being on the road and all that sort of stuff, tell us, you got onto a lineup of a festival later in the year.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit about that and let people know what you guys are up to.
Yeah, definitely. We've got 2 festivals lined up. There's one Incarceration Festival, which should be fun. That's where they filmed the Shawshank Redemption. So, yeah, I
Amazing.
think in Mansfield, Ohio. And yeah, unfortunately that one got rained out last year, so we're playing that one this July. And then we're playing Aftershock Festival in Sacramento. We're playing the day with Tool and Limp Bizkit. So yeah,
That's that's what a bill to be on.
Yeah.
Right. There's some big names playing that, and
I'm really stoked.
yeah,
for
I
that
saw
one.
the flyer. You guys are up there. Got your name up there. So congratulations. That's
Thanks,
gonna be
mate.
a fun one. Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
The grind continues. Yeah.
The grind continues, and yeah, like for everybody, if you don't know, Far From the Gods, go and check them out. Check out their album dropped last year, Soul Revolution, and you guys have a re-release out this year of a single.
Yeah, so we have a single called 1,000 Lifetimes that, you know, really AJ wrote about all the moms out there that really, they go through so much. I mean, with all of us knuckleheads and
Definitely.
all the, you know, it's a lot. And so that was like our way of thanking the moms out there. And it's also a story of a struggle, you know, and also in, you know, the African American community and how important it is that, you know, like, we're a multicultural band, and bands don't have to just be of one culture or color. And so we teamed up with Corey Glover of Living Color.
Yeah.
And that was a really, really special moment. I got to record his vocals here in New York, and, you know, he's from New York, so it was just really special moment that we got to capture with him singing our song and sharing that experience and what AJ, our singer, is sharing with the world, you know, and having such a legend hop on a track and like really be into our song was it's a
Yeah, that's
crazy
amazing.
feeling.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Yeah, check it out. 1,000 Lifetimes featuring Corey Glover of Living Color. So it's up on all the DSP platforms. Go stream it.
yeah.
Hell yeah, brother. So on that note, we will wrap it up and encourage you guys to please follow, like, and subscribe on YouTube. You can also listen to the podcast on all platforms where podcasts are streamed. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, or would like to join the podcast, you can email us at therecordshepherds@gmail.com. We're also on the Instagrams. We're on the Facebooks. We're on the TikToks. We're delivering clips. We're delivering full episodes. So any way you guys want to engage, reach out to us, and we will give you all of that content.
These guys are the real deal. So
The real deal.
listen to the content.
Listen
This
to the
will be
Record
help-
Shepherds.
This will be helpful, I promise.
Yeah, well, look, it just leaves it for me to thank you so much, Richie, for coming on. It's been a great conversation, and thank you for sharing so much amazing advice, stories, and just information that hopefully a lot of listeners will not only find informative, but also benefit from.
Definitely.
So until the next exciting episode of the Record Shepherds, keep following along. Sorry, I messed that up totally. Until the next exciting episode, continue to follow the guidance of the shepherds.
Don't be the sheep, be the goat.